Hey guys, what's going on? Today I wanted to show you exactly my four go-to telemetry channels on my AIM RS 3 so you can copy and paste them into your next analysis. Now, we all know that telemetry analysis is super important because it basically unveils all of the hidden places where you're losing time. I do it every single day, every single session, not only when I'm in driving, but also when I'm doing the coaching to the drivers at Baybris, and I'm helping them finding lap time, not only in terms of driving improvements, but also in terms of setup and engine tuning improvements. So let's get into it. The number one channel I obviously include on my chart. Basically, this is my AIM ratio 3. I have multiple, I've got multiple profile available. One is for the lambda, one is for for the wet, etc. This is on my desktop, whereas on my PC, on my laptop, I got like 6 or 7 different. Oh no, I said that. All right, 7 or 8 different profiles with all different configurations. But the number one channel I use in all my profiles is the GPS speed. Well, I guess it's quite obvious, right? I mean, you can check anything, but if you don't have your speed and you don't know what kind of speed you're traveling, I mean, there's no point looking at anything else. Now, in some cases, you may want to just look at the chassis, and you can just, for example, just look at the lateral acceleration against, for example, the longitudinal accelerations, lateral versus longitudinal G, and you can basically look, for example, on the map, with the racing lines. You can have a look. Okay, in this case, this is 2 sessions from the same driver. I'm like, okay, in this session, the driver in the green session, the driver is able to brake a lot more here in the mechanics corner at Lonato, getting up to, for example, 83 Gs against 0.83 here too, into turn 3 basically. So you can see these kind of things if you just look at the grip level and how much longitudinal lateral G. You don't need the speed. Well, you could actually add it, but it's not necessary. But in all the other scenarios, I want speed to be there at any given time, because without speed, basically, it's like everything else is meaningless. But you can see that with GPS speed, the only thing I don't really love about basically any system, is that there's a lot of spikes. As you can see, like, you can't rely too much on that. Obviously there's there's bit too many spikes, and that's why AIM and other, and also Unipro, I guess, and Alfano, they all provide the chance for you to basically add an extra sensor that is connected to your rear axle, that basically tells your like wheel spinning speed basically, and so you can track with very little spikes you're just like your wheel speed very very accurately. You can also have so you can have one sensor on the rear axle and one sensor on the front axle, which is what they do in formula cars. Obviously, you can tell that the difference in terms of speed from front to rear, so you can tell if there's understeer, if there's oversteer, if there's wheel spin in the rear, etc. So I used it in my KZ quite a lot, the rear axle speed, because it shows you when you're wheel spinning or when you're locking the tires on the brakes, which is impossible to tell from the GPS speed. But let's say in 99% of the times, you're just going to rely on GPS speed and just hope that it's good enough to not have too many spikes. But remember, the GPS speed is important. You always have to overlay it with RPM, and that's your second channel that you want to include. RPMs are so important because, well, RPM stands for revolutions per minute. I mean, I hope you know what I'm talking about. Basically, it's that electrical cable that is connected to your basically spark plug cable. How do you call that? But yeah, it's basically connected to the coil and of the spark plug basically, and it just tells you the revolutions per minute. So how fast, let's say, the wheel is spinning per minute. And yeah, I mean, for example, in mini, this is like a mini X30 race at Lonato, and I can see that the max RPMs here, we can see it's 14,200. The minimum here in the corner is like 9,000 there. Well, if we go into very very lowest point, okay, here's locking up the tires, and it gets up down to 7,600. Otherwise, it's like in the middle corner of the second hairpiece, like 8,100. So yeah, that's yeah, just in terms of RPMs, the reason why I want to use RPMs, okay, not only to validate the speed, because have a look. For example, here you can see that the RPM curve is way smoother than the speed curve. As you can see, the speed curve has a lot of noise, has a lot of spikes here and there, which is not ideal. Whereas the RPMs is quite a bit smoother. It also has some spikes, you know. Again, it's very hard to have perfect ones. Okay, you know why he's having the spikes though? Is because he's like hitting the curb a little bit here, also into the first corner. He's hitting the curb here, also in the exit of turn 3, which is the bar corner. So, and here we have a massive spike because he's locking the tires under the braking, which again makes sense. And yeah, so you're gonna see occasional spikes here and there, but yeah, the great thing about the RPMs is a lot more consistent and a lot smoother in general compared to the speed, and it can always tell you, yeah, whether the speed trace is right, or it has, like for example, here there's a massive spike in speed, but you don't see equally a massive spike in RPM. So what it shows is that probably this is a bit unreal, you know. We went from basically like 92 to like 94. Was that? Yeah. It looks like a massive spike, but it's not that much. But anyways, you can see that it's not validating the RPM so much. So it's like, okay, that must be just a GPS thing. So I use RPMs a lot, not just obviously to validate the speed. I mean, uh, obviously the way I use RPM is to tell how much the driver is keeping up the RPMs in the mid corner, whether he's making nice open line or is he Ving the corner too much, you know. For example, this is again the same driver in two different sessions. The red is qualifying and the green is the final. As you can see, there's a huge difference in terms of minimum speed here and the double left at Lonato, and also in terms of RPMs. It's kind of validated. As you can see in this area, we got 10,200 RPMs for the green against 10,900. It's about 700 RPMs difference, and that's 3 kilometers an hour in this corner, in this specific place. So all the way through the corner, the green is doing more of a V. As you can see, it's attacking more the entry. As you see on the entry, it's going a bit deeper, a bit faster, but it's stopping too much in the mid. And in terms of delta time, which is our third channel, delta time, as you can see, in terms of delta time, it's going from 0.58 to 0.233. So it's like almost 1.6 tenths lost in just this corner alone. And I used RPMs just to see what he was doing. Basically is that he's keeping all it's giving me like 600 RPMs less, yeah, something like that, 700 RPMs less, which of course isn't ideal, because you're basically bogging down the engine. It's like you feel like it's like bah. And in order to compensate this speed loss in the corner, we would have to go up like 3 sprockets or so, because every sprocket difference, just to let you know, it's about 200 RPMs. It obviously depends from a few factors, but in this case, yeah, 200 RPMs. So in this case, since we're lacking about 650 RPMs, yeah, we would need 3 RPMs more, sorry, 3 sprockets more. So let's say from 73 to 76, okay, just to make up the speed loss. But you can't do this, for one corner alone. We can't have, a different sprocket just because that corner is bad, because in other corners is very close. Here in the mechanics corner, the speed is very close. It's just 100, it's just like 1 kilometers less, 100 RPMs less. And so, yeah, it wouldn't make sense to change 3 sprockets just for this corner. So the driver has to fix this corner, has to figure out a way to keep up the RPMs more, maybe doing the corner a little bit more wide open on the entry, a bit more precise at the apex. You see he's missing the apex in the green. It's going a bit too deep, missing the optimal racing line, okay? And then he's being a bit also in the exit, he's not making wide on the exit too. So it's yeah, for sure with the RPMs you can see a lot. But then other very cool way I use RPMs is to obviously tell how efficient was the braking was. You can use the longitudinal G, but I'll explain that in another video. I mean, you can see very well whether the drivers braked hard or not with the longitudinal G, which is this one. Longitudinal G basically measures the longitudinal acceleration, so how aggressive you're braking and how efficient your acceleration is. So the more negative it is, the value, like in this case you can see 0.83 or 0.77, the more negative the value means the more you are braked efficiently and hard. And then when it gets into positive values is how good the acceleration was on, yeah, just on power. And as you can see, the green in the race actually did a better job in my opinion, because he just managed to brake quite a bit harder, down to 7,500 RPMs. He used the brakes way more than in quali. So I believe that if in quali with a higher grip of the track, if he used the brakes like in the green, it would have been finding alpha 10th or 1/10 in this corner. I'm pretty sure about that. And you can see also in terms of G's, you can see gets up to 83, 0.83 compared to 0.70, 0.80 of the other session. So you can see the green has done a way better job. But I could have told it without watching the longitudinal G's. I could have told it already by just watching the RPM. So it's an easier channel to understand for most beginners. So I would suggest you just use that instead of the longitudinal G first. And also here you can see how much braking the driver is using. For example, here is a very fast corner. There's no need to use that much brake, but I guess in this case there was, because he arrived a bit more speed. And so look at that, his peak RPM is 11,200 compared to, let's say, 11,900. So he used the brakes quite a bit more. Obviously, there's multiple ways I use RPMs. I then go in to look at exactly how much average RPMs there is through the session, so through the lap, so I can assess also the sprocket. But this, I mean, the topic for another video. I don't want to make it too long. I don't want to make it too complicated. But it's just basically you can do it in different ways. You can either create a custom channel like that, and I'll show you. It's actually quite cool. I mean, let me show you real quick. You just do it like that. You set it to mixed, and you can see here if the sprocket changed a little bit. It looks like in quali, because normally the radius of the tires changes a little bit, like fraction of a millimeter changes from session to session. The more what I've noticed over the years is that every session you do, the tire gets slightly bigger. Okay, so in terms of diameter, circumference, it goes from, let's say, 84 centimeters to 84.1, to next session 84.2, next session 84.3, which is 0.1 millimeter. But the bigger the tire gets, the longer the sprocket becomes. And as you can see in the green, all right, the green seems a little bit long on the sprocket because the top speed is a bit further up, and it's not related to slipstream. I will talk more about this in another video. I don't want to complicate stuff, but as I say, it's like the higher up here the line is, basically the shorter your sprocket. So you will have like more acceleration, but your final speed will be lower. So this is like your final speed. So this is like an overlay between speed here in the bottom and RPM at the top. Okay, so the higher up here, the longer the sprocket, the shorter sprocket, and the lower up here, but the further to the right, it means the longer the sprocket, because you're gonna have a higher top speed, etc. But I'll explain this properly in another video. I'm pretty sure this is gonna be very interesting, so stay tuned for the channel. Make sure you subscribe if you feel this is valuable. I have a bet going on with my girlfriend till the end of the summer. She believes my channel and my time will be better spent in different ways, but I want to prove her wrong. So we made a bet that I would have made to 1,000 subscribers by the end of the summer. Right now we're far away from that goal. We're 256, so please try to help. And I mean, if this is helpful to you, just make sure you subscribe so you can get notifications and watch more videos like that I believe is gonna make you faster on track. And also we prove my girlfriend wrong that this is not that useless as she thinks. So yeah, going back to the real analysis we were looking. So we were talking about the two channels. We mentioned briefly the delta time. So delta time is basically, it's not really a channel. Okay, let's be honest. I mean, I kind of lied to you. So delta time is not really a channel. It's something that's coming down here in the bottom. This is this one basically. You can choose how big to make it. You can make it like that. You can make it just super small. I like to have it quite big, to be honest, because I think delta time is my religion. I always tell to my drivers, guys, at the end of the day, whatever you do, yes, you're obviously here to learn. You're obviously here to push. You're obviously here to find the limit. But at the end of the day, what the real thing that we need to care about in all the setup changes we do, in all the configurations on the engines we do, in all the driving you do, it's a delta time. Your corner was faster or slower. The only way to tell is by looking at the delta time. So because the good thing about the delta time of the AIM, obviously you got to make sure it's set to distance base, because if you set to time base, it's not gonna pop up here. You see that? So if you are right now on RS3 and you're wondering, oh, Alessio, why I'm not able to see my delta time, it's because probably you are set on time base. So you're gonna make sure you click this stopwatch here, and you click on set time distance base, and you can see down below you can find the delta time, and it's really nice. I mean, it's because it tells exactly where the lap time is being found, gained, or lost. Okay, so in this case, look at the green. The green, as I said, it was the final. At the end of the lap, there's a 5/10 gap difference. Okay, you can see from a 54.8 of quali to 55.3 in the heat. Sorry, in the final. But interestingly, yeah, the green, as I said, a bit because I think that the radius of the tires got a little bit smaller and maybe picked up a little bit of slipstream too. But as we saw from the RPM scatter plot, it looked like it had a little bit longer. For whatever reason, that the final drive ratio, the ratio between the sprocket and the tires, it was actually a little bit longer on the sprocket. When I say longer, it's like a little bit smaller at the sprocket, or bigger tires. I mean, but yeah, as you can see, the top speed of the green was a little bit quicker. It gained almost 1/10, 73,000 until the end of the straight. Then obviously he lost about 1/10 into the bar corner, turn 3. Then he went and lost alpha 10th in the mechanics corner. Then in the double left, he lost 1.5 tenths. All right, very interestingly, you can see. And then you can see in the chicane, he lost from 208 to 286, so about 800. Then we go into the first hairpin, and it goes from 289 to 309, so about the same. Second hairpin, he loses 1.4 tenths, as you can see, and last hairpin, he loses 400 and a half. So that's my favorite. The great thing about the AIM the other time compared to many other software and like data software, for example, like, I mean, I'm not gonna name names, but I've noticed, for example, with Starlane, it's great. It's a pretty decent one, but the only thing I don't really like from that is that it's the one we used to have before. It's called Math Starlane. Is that the delta time is not very accurate because it doesn't compute the distance with the speed. Because guys, remember that there is, to see the delta time, you need to have some like a software that computes speed and distance, because you can go super fast through a corner, but if you make too much distance for that, it's gonna actually be a time loss. So there's gotta be a software, in this case AIM RS3, which does a really good job, but double check with all your software providers, with Unipro, Alfano, whatever you're using. I have to double check myself too, because I'm just using AIM RS3. I'm sticking to it. It just works really well for me. But for like for whatever you're using, you gotta make sure that the delta time is accurate. Otherwise, it's gonna be a problem. It's gonna give you false signals, because you maybe think, oh, I'm doing such a good corner. Look at the delta time. The delta time is going real well. It's giving me like lap time, which was happening with us, for example, in the race at Starling. And it was like, but the reality is that many times the driver was making so many meters, and even though it looked like it was super fast on the speed, the reality was that the guy was losing. And because then we would look at the sector times of that specific corner, it was like, oh, but why is the sector time slower compared to the other driver, even though he has so much more speed? So we were like understanding, and then we came to the conclusion, oh, the delta time is wrong. It's not computing the distance. So you make sure that the delta time computes the distance. But anyways, remember, whatever you see on the data, at the end of the day, you gotta make sure everything is benchmarked against the delta time. Again, here they call it time compare. I just call it delta time, but I mean, whatever. Then the number 4, and another hugely important sensor, it's the exhaust temperature, also known as EGT. So why is that important? Well, I mean, let's be honest. I mean, the carburation is key. All right, it's absolutely key in motorsport, in racing. I mean, in karting, I would say. There's also carburation in cars, I guess, or not. I mean, I think it's electrical. It's like electrical injection. But anyways, I need to make some research on that. But in karting, you have to make sure the carburation is spot on, especially in 2-stroke engines. And in the OKJ and on OK, I mean, juniors and seniors, or even X30, you can do the carburation with if it's a membrane carburetor, you can do it like on your own while you're driving. Whereas when you have carburetors like 60 Mini or the KZ ones, you can't manually do it by yourself. I can't recall the name of the carburetor. Like, in Italian we say a vaschetta. It's like, it's different. It's the opposite from membrane. Basically, you just can't change the jets while driving, all right? So let me show you. First of all, if you don't like the scaling of AIM that he likes, and it's like you see it's too, you don't like it because it's not too clear. What you could do is like, well, tell pretty much what's your max and minimum, and then you go here and you can change the max and minimum. You just click on this. You go here to the channels. You go and click to this clog. How do you say? Yeah, cog. Well, sorry for my English. And instead of 750, I'm gonna put like 725, and instead of 400, I'm gonna put like 445. And you can see now it's gonna be less stretched. And now I can, because I see the minimum is still not too close, I can make, instead of 445, I can make like 490, because I guess we're a bit too lean in the bottom, so we had to. All right, so you can see now it's way more pronounced, so it's much more clear, right? So as you can see, there was a vastly different carburation between the two sessions, and I feel that we were better off in the race. In quali, we were a little bit too lean, unfortunately. So yeah, I feel that in quali we left some time on the table because we were like up 722 is a bit too lean. But yeah, then I guess in quali we did the better. No, in the race we improved it quite a bit, but we lost time in the corners, obviously, because I mean, obviously, we were like a fourth session on the tires, and the track got a little bit slower. So yeah, but anyways, you can see the difference in carburation. So it's again very useful to see. And again, by the way, we can create another scatter plot. All right, like the like similar to what we did for the RPMs. I'll explain this, and again in another lesson. All right, in another I'm actually create another one. I will explain to you this in another video more precisely, but again, you can do something really cool. You can do basically that. All right, and this shows you again how much difference there is in carburation, whether it's, again, you're stacking them to make sure it's mixed and not well, like tilted. Make sure it's mixed. Okay, so you can overlay them, and so you can see this is a very cool hack. You can see one over the other, and basically you can see, okay, the red is way higher. What does it mean? It means that at the given speed, let's say at the same speed, which is like in this case is like 91 kilometers an hour, you can see there's about almost 40 degrees difference. So it's like when it's like overlapped, when it's like yeah, just shifted up, it's too lean. When it's shifted down, it's too rich. I mean, one of the two is either too rich, or one is maybe the green is spot on. It's just the red is too lean. But anyways, so I like to use that a lot. But the real reason I use exhaust temperature a lot, especially in the races where you can't really run the throttle or brake sensor. It's forbidden basically in Italy. I mean, I don't know in other events in the US or in Asia, I don't know, but in Italy, especially like WSK or CIK races, you just can't run the throttle brake sensor. I mean, you can keep them on, but you make sure you cannot connect them. I mean, I think it's a bit of a bullshit rule, to be honest, because why would you care? I think they just do it to prevent the costs of karting to go too high, because obviously it costs quite a lot to have all the sensors. But I think it's still bullshit, because you should still let it. I mean, you should let people do whatever they can, they want with the sensors. But yeah, even then we can't change the rules, so we'll stick to what they say. But yeah, the reason why I use a lot EGT is because, well, exhaust temperature. It's because you can tell where the driver went on the throttle, because the way it works is basically this: when the driver goes on the throttle, the EGT goes up. When the driver goes off the throttle, the EGT goes down. Okay, basically the line goes down. So you can see pretty much and pretty well how efficient the throttle release is. For example, you can see here the red release the throttle more aggressively and efficiently than the other session in green. So okay, that's more advanced. I'll show you this in another video. I'll make a note of that. But yeah, you can see the steepness of the throttle release. You can see whether the driver released the throttle properly or not, which this is a problem I see a lot in many drivers, by the way. And I also spoke to some Formula 4 engineers, and recently they said a lot of drivers have this issue, and that's bad, because you're not letting the differential do the right thing in cars, but in karting as well. You're not letting the carburetor inject the fuel that it needs. So that's one issue in what I see, but I'll explain this in another video. But the great thing is that you can see exactly the time the driver goes on the throttle. You can see in this case the red goes on the throttle here, whereas the green goes on the throttle about here. And you can see there's about a few meters of difference. There's quite a bit, and you can see the red is leaning out earlier, because obviously it went on the gas earlier. So I mean, there is no such a thing as the earlier the better on the throttle. Remember this. It's a common fallacy. I'll make a video of this too. But you can see here there's quite a big difference. This guy on the red, still the same driver, but he went on the gas 607 meters. Here you can see, whereas in the green he went on the gas at about 610. Now it's not easy to tell exactly the moment he goes on the gas, because you can see there's a bit of like a curve. It's not like perfectly up and down, even though we are using the most rapid AIM EGT sensor. It's not easy to say exactly meter by meter where it's going to throttle, but you can assume, you can guess. And look again, here we're going into the chicane, and there's quite a big difference in terms of throttle application. You can see this driver goes on, the red goes on the gas at 784, whereas the green goes on the gas at 787. It's about 3 meters difference. The first hairpin is about the same. Then the next corner, the second one, there's about like 1 or 2 meters difference in throttle. The last corner is pretty much the same. But you can see it's great because you can tell how early or late the driver is going on throttle. And yeah, it's quite useful, especially between driver to driver. When you're comparing the same driver, different sessions, you'll see very similar, patterns. But it's good when you compare against other drivers, because you can see whether it's faster to go on the throttle earlier or whether it's faster to go on the throttle later. Because, as I said, sometimes you may be tempted to go on the gas earlier and earlier, but the reality is that if you go too early, you're going to generate push understeer. You're going to go even wider on the exit. You'll probably end up with too much steering wheel on the exit, and your exit speed is going to be not good enough. So, and by doing so, you also lean out the engine, which is, again, not that ideal in some occasions when your engine is already quite lean. So these are my 4 channels, my go-to channels, which, as a beginner, would be what I would suggest you to start. So number 1, as I said, was the speed. All right, the GPS speed, which you can have the GPS, but you can also have the rear axle speed, which is very accurate. You can buy it on the AIM website. You just need an extension between the Micron 6 and the sensor, just to connect the things. It doesn't connect right away to the mic. You need an extension. It's called an expansion. Then the second one I mentioned was the RPM, because you can validate the speed when there is the spikes, and also to tell the sprocket. You also want to tell this braking efficiency, etc. And the third one is, as I said, the delta time, which is not really a sensor, but it just makes sure you're there by making sure you're in distance base instead of base time base. And the fourth is obviously the EGT, exhaust temperature, because you can tell obviously the carburation, which is really, really important. And also you can coach the driver by telling him how efficient he is on the throttle release, but also on the throttle pickup point, whether he's picking up the throttle at this specific place or at this other specific place, whether he has to go a bit earlier or whether he has to go a bit later. Because remember, there's no such a thing as the earlier the better. You just have to go on the gas at the right point, and it's gonna change from session to session, I guess, from setup to setup. And but yeah, it's normally at around the apex point. That's when you go on the gas, but it depends from category to category. Okay, I hope this was useful. Let me know in the comments if you got some questions, or if you have some other video ideas you'd like me to cover. I'll be very happy to consider those, and I'll make I'll shout out to you in the next video if you come up with a great idea, whether it's data analysis or any kind of driving technique about karting. I've got 22 years in this world now, and I feel that with these 22 years in the karting environment, I feel that I've accumulated enough experience. I can obviously accumulate more, but I can confidently now talk about many topics with confidence that you're gonna get a lot of value. So I hope this was useful. It's now 8:53 a.m. I gotta go to the track. I had this early morning, and I need to go to the track to our summer camps at Baby Race to do some coaching, and make sure the drivers have a lot of improvements during the day. I'll see you next time.